there's a lot of people seeing these very high prices and they're thinking, why not give her a second chance? And the thing is, when you think about high prices, every decision's made at the margin. And so, yes, calf prices are the highest they've ever been, but so are the prices for cull cows. So are the prices for bred heifers. So are the prices for bred cows. So in cases with high prices, everything's high. And it's also true with low prices. When you have an excess cattle through the supply of beef cattle herd in the U.S., you tend to have excess cattle. The prices go down. I mean, they're commodities. So every class of animals got low prices when prices are low, and every class of animals got high prices when they're high. And so with that said, what we did was we compared these three choices. So our sort of base choice was let's keep her and rebreed her. And then we compared that to let's buy a 3 to 6 year old bred cow and use her as a replacement. So we would sell an open and then replace her with a bred 3 to 6 year old bred cow, or we would replace an open with a bred heifer. And so what we did was we accounted for those differences at the margin. So we did this back in late December, and we basically said, okay, in 2024 in November at weaning, that's when we would sell the open animal, and we got the price for what open cows were selling for at that period, and so that's a source of revenue. And then we went out and said, well, if you rebreed her, you're not going to get anything to sell until 2026. Now, conversely, if you went out and sold your open, you get the revenue, and then you go out and purchase a 3 to 6 year old bred cow. We went to the projected markets, and actually we had some data at that time because they were starting to sort of sell these bred 3 to 6 year olds, and we got data from the marketplace. And so for the 3 to 6 year olds, we were able to purchase on average basically a 3 to 6 year old for $2,900. So you've got this cost of buying her, and then in November of year one, which would be 2025, you could generate roughly $1,733, and that's a $2.95 pound price for the average between a steer and a heifer, because you don't know which one, so we just sort of took the average. And so you've got the 1,700 in year one, and then in year two in 2026 you'd get, and we used the projected prices that our livestock marketing people put together for 2026 on average, and you're basically getting another $1,730. So in total, you're generating for buying that 3 to 6 year old cow, you're generating $2,417. Okay, and so that's the value of replacing your open with a bred cow. We did the same thing for a bred heifer, and bottom line is we generated $2,297. So now, and then let me just say what we found for keeping the open heifer and waiting to 2026 where we would get a calf. We only generate 1,700. What does that say? That says the difference between buying a 3 to 6 year old replacement versus giving her a second chance was $654 per head. Okay, so and then the difference between giving her a second chance and buying the bred heifer was only $534. There's a $120 difference between those. Now, we understand that there's some of these it's based on projections, and so you never know what the price will actually be, but I would argue that either one of those decisions would be better than keeping an open cow. I mean, they're the different, like I said, 500 versus 650, both of those are much better than keeping the open cow. And so that's a projection over the next 2 years. And so time really isn't your friend with open cows. And so we didn't look beyond that because right now we're just trying to come up with an idea for what you ought to sort of do right now. But the model's been developed in such a way where we've turned it into a calculator. We'll be putting it online. What the calculator does is it allows the producers to actually kind of put in their own prices if they want to. So they can either use NDSU estimates for projections, or they can put in their own prices if they think they have a good handle on what they would be. And of course, you can put in different prices and try to understand how sensitive the results are. And I still will argue that moving forward, you're going to kind of find the same results. The final values for each choice may if you expect if we get more grass in Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, which I believe we're starting to see because of all the rain they've had down there finally. You start expanding the herd, prices will eventually come back down. Now, whether they'll come back down to where they were, for the last peak of the cattle cycle is another question, but they will eventually come back down. But I think these results are going to hold between these three choices. And I'm just going to kind of shut up there and let you respond, because I just went over quite a bit of stuff.
Well, I mean, you sent me the findings of that project earlier as we were preparing for this conversation, but I can't say I was really shocked by what you guys found. But I'm glad you said that your prediction is that these are going to hold, because that was my next question. You did this during a high market where people are pretty giddy about being able to ranch during this time point. We know it's going to drop eventually.
Right. And so what I would say to that is, yes, it is going to drop, and let's just say it drops. But my point earlier is it's going to drop, but at the margin, all classes of animals are going to drop with it. I mean, and so even at these very high prices, right, it pays to buy an expensive replacement. Now, when you have very low prices, I still think it's going to pay to buy these replacements, even though they're going to be priced lower, because they're all connected. All these classes of animals are connected through the supply chain. And so, yeah, my hunch is, and so this to me just sort of justifies and gives validation to some of the other published studies that people have done on keeping cull cows.
Folks, if you want the full scoop on and this conversation, be sure to listen to the full podcast episode on casual cattle conversations. You can find that on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and frankly, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. With that, happy ranching, folks.